I never thought I'd be a widow at 38, but here I am, Jasmine, sitting at my kitchen table at 7 a.m., trying to get my 8-year-old son ready for school while fighting back tears. It's been 9 months since the accident at the construction site took Daniel from us, but sometimes I remind myself that life must go on. Every morning, as I pour myself a cup of strong coffee, the warmth does little to ease the chill left by his absence. My little boy, with his wide, curious eyes and boundless energy, is my constant reminder of both the love we once shared and the void that now occupies our home. Even as I coax him into his school uniform and pack his lunch with care, the ache of loss lingers in the quiet moments. This Christmas season, I had reluctantly agreed to attend an exclusive, adult-only party, a promise of an evening of refined conversation and fleeting reprieve from the weight of single motherhood. The invitation had been as elegant as it was unyielding: no children allowed. It was meant to be a sanctuary for grown-ups, a chance to savor a few hours of sophisticated indulgence without the usual chaos of family life. I had arranged for a trusted babysitter to care for my son, convinced that I could afford this brief escape, even if it meant spending the night apart from him. As I prepared to leave, a swirl of conflicting emotions overcame me: the hope of reconnecting with a part of myself that had been buried under relentless responsibility, and the pang of guilt for being away from my child during a time when every moment feels precious. Little did I know, the carefully curated promise of an adult-only celebration was about to be upended in the most unexpected way, by the sight of my sister's 3 children, uninvited yet undeniably joyful, injecting a dose of lively chaos into an event that was supposed to be strictly for adults. And so, as I stepped out into the cold night with a heavy heart and a determined spirit, I braced myself for an evening that would challenge everything I thought I knew about exclusivity, sacrifice, and the true spirit of Christmas. That elegant envelope arrived on a chilly afternoon, its glossy finish and carefully embossed lettering promising a night of refined celebration. As I carefully unfolded the invitation, I was immediately struck by the crisp, unambiguous statement that leapt off the page: no children allowed. Every detail of the invitation, its luxurious paper, the delicate calligraphy, was designed to evoke an air of exclusivity. It made clear that this was an adult-only affair, a rare chance for parents like me to step away from the daily grind of family responsibilities. Reading those words, a bittersweet mix of emotions flooded over me. On one hand, the prospect of an evening free from the usual chaos was undeniably tempting, a promise of quiet conversation, sparkling cocktails, and the kind of unburdened laughter that only adult gatherings can offer. Yet, on the other hand, the rule was a painful reminder of the sacrifice I would have to make, leaving my precious son behind, even if only for a few hours. I had already arranged for a trusted babysitter, a decision made out of necessity rather than desire. The invitation's strict policy was both a relief and a burden. It guaranteed an escape for me, but at the cost of an evening apart from my little boy. Every time I reread that invitation, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt, as if the very words, "no children allowed," were a personal judgment on the sacrifices required of motherhood. As I tucked the invitation into my purse that day, I realized it symbolized much more than an adult-only party. It was a microcosm of the choices I was forced to make, balancing the desire for personal freedom with the inescapable responsibilities of being a parent. And deep down, even as I looked forward to an evening of grown-up camaraderie, I knew that the night would come with its own set of bittersweet compromises. Leaving him behind, even for a few hours, felt like tearing a piece of my heart away. I had arranged for a trusted babysitter, someone who had been a comforting presence during past family emergencies, but as I hugged my 8-year-old goodbye that chilly morning, I couldn't shake the overwhelming guilt. His bright eyes, filled with innocent trust, silently pleaded for my attention, and every part of me wanted to wrap him in a warm embrace and never let go. Yet, deep inside, I craved a moment of escape. The promise of an adult-only Christmas party, with its glittering decor and refined conversation, whispered of a night where I could reclaim a long-lost piece of myself. Still, the sacrifice was steep, My presence at that party meant leaving my son in the quiet comfort of someone else's care, a decision that echoed with every step I took away from him. As I stepped out into the cold morning light, I could feel the weight of that choice pressing down on me. The delicate balance between seeking a brief reprieve and the ever-present pull of maternal duty created an emotional tug-of-war. Every moment away from him was a quiet test of resolve, a painful trade-off for a few precious hours of adult conversation and holiday indulgence. With a final kiss on his forehead and whispered promises of a swift return, I embarked on that night, carrying the ache of his absence in my heart. It was a sacrifice I made willingly, though not without sorrow, a bittersweet reminder that sometimes, even the smallest moments of personal freedom come at the greatest cost. The moment finally came to leave. With the invitation tucked securely in my purse and the weight of 1,000 conflicting emotions pressing on my chest, I stepped outside into the crisp winter air. The cold felt sharper than usual, as if the night itself mourned the sacrifice I was about to make. Every step toward the car felt like walking away from a piece of my soul, and as I hugged my son goodbye, I sensed that this departure was more than just physical, it was a quiet, heart-wrenching farewell to a part of me. At the door, I paused, reluctant to close the chapter on this tender moment. His small hand gripped mine, and in that brief, silent exchange, I felt both the fierce love of a mother and the sting of inevitable loss. I whispered promises of a swift return, though inside, I knew the night would stretch long and lonely without him by my side. As I drove away, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold against the dark canvas of the winter night. My mind was a whirlwind of regret and determination. I had chosen this adult-only escape for the fleeting chance to rediscover myself, a hope for a few hours of grown-up freedom that might help ease the relentless demands of motherhood. Yet, every mile that separated me from home was a painful reminder of what I was sacrificing, the warmth of my son's presence and the comfort of our shared memories. The journey to the party was a quiet one, marked by the hum of the engine and the soft patter of falling snow. In the solitude of the car, I allowed myself a moment of vulnerability, a silent acknowledgement of the deep sacrifices made in the name of self-care. Even as I steeled myself for an evening of elegant conversation and fleeting relief, my heart whispered that the true challenge lay in balancing the desperate need for escape with the unyielding love for my child. And so, with a heavy heart and a resolve born of necessity, I merged into the flow of city traffic, each turn of the wheel a step further into a night that promised both solace and unforeseen surprises. After what felt like an endless journey in my car, I finally arrived at the venue. Stepping out of the taxi, I was immediately enveloped by a crisp, festive glow that contrasted sharply with the loneliness I'd felt on the drive. The party was held in an upscale loft that seemed to shimmer with an air of refined celebration. Frosted windows and glittering lights framed a scene that looked straight out of a holiday magazine, every detail meticulously curated for an adult-only gathering. I hesitated for just a moment at the entrance, the warmth and elegant hum of conversation beckoning me forward even as my heart still ached for the absence of my son. I passed through a set of grand double doors into a space that vibrated with the gentle murmur of sophisticated chatter, clinking glasses, and soft, melodic holiday tunes. The interior was adorned with modern Christmas decor, minimalist ornaments, sleek silver garlands, and a towering tree that glistened with understated beauty. As I mingled with other guests, I tried to set aside the bittersweet guilt of leaving my little boy at home. Here, at least for a few precious hours, I was meant to be someone else, a woman rediscovering her spark in the company of peers, indulging in grown-up conversation, and savoring the illusion of freedom. I smiled, exchanged pleasantries, and even allowed myself to be swept up by the contagious excitement that filled the room. Yet, amid the elegance and exclusivity, my eyes kept darting to every corner, searching for any sign of what was to come. The promise of a child-free night was sacrosanct, yet deep down I wondered if tonight might not be as clear-cut as the invitation had led me to believe. Little did I know, the true test of the evening's carefully drawn boundaries was just around the corner, waiting to shatter the illusion of a perfectly controlled celebration. Just when I had begun to settle into the elegant rhythm of the evening, I caught sight of something that made my heart skip a beat. Amid the polished chatter and sparkling decor, small, energetic figures flitted at the edges of the crowd, 3 children, unmistakably out of place in this strictly adult sanctuary. At first, I blinked, wondering if my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. But there they were, laughing, darting between clusters of impeccably dressed guests, their joyful noise a stark contrast to the hushed sophistication that the party was supposed to embody. I recognized the familiar features almost instantly. They were my sister's 3 kids. In that moment, a swirl of emotions surged through me. Anger bubbled beneath the surface. This was a blatant violation of the rules, a double standard that undermined the very purpose of the no kids policy. Yet, amid that indignation, a soft smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Their carefree laughter and unfiltered joy lent the room a surprising warmth that no carefully curated decor could replicate. I stood there, caught between conflicting feelings. On one hand, I had sacrificed an evening of adult respite, leaving my own son behind with a babysitter, to taste a fleeting moment of sophistication. On the other, the unexpected presence of my sister's children challenged the rigidity of the night's promise. Their innocent exuberance was a reminder of what the holiday season was truly about: unbridled joy, family, and the chaotic beauty of life. For a brief moment, I wondered, had the hosts intended for this to be a subtle rebellion against their own rules? Or was it simply that my sister, ever the free spirit, had decided that the true magic of Christmas couldn't be confined by any invitation? The unexpected twist left me reeling. The carefully drawn line between an adult-only celebration and the spontaneous, messy reality of family life had blurred in an instant. And as I watched those children laugh and play amidst the elegant clink of glasses and subdued conversation, I couldn't help but feel that perhaps this disruption was a blessing in disguise, a reminder that no rule, however meticulously enforced, can extinguish the light of genuine joy during the holidays. Unable to shake off the confusion and mounting frustration, I found myself drawn into a quiet corner of the room where the formal chatter gave way to hushed murmurs. I couldn't let the glaring double standard pass without a word. Summoning every ounce of the poise I had mustered all evening, I approached one of the event organizers, a sharply dressed gentleman whose polite smile belied the tension in his eyes. "Excuse me," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil churning inside me. I couldn't help but notice that, while the invitation was crystal clear about no children being allowed, there seemed to be kids here tonight. Could you explain how that fits into the party's guidelines? For a long moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. The organizer's smile wavered ever so slightly as he searched for the right words. Well, he said carefully, there appears to have been a misunderstanding. We had a strict policy, of course, but sometimes family connections, they tend to slip through the cracks. Slip through the cracks? I repeated, incredulous. My sister's 3 children are here, laughing and playing as if they're part of the celebration, while I left my own son at home so I could enjoy an evening meant solely for adults. How does that make sense? A few nearby guests exchanged uneasy glances, and I could sense that my question had struck a nerve. The organizer cleared his throat, his response now more guarded. Sometimes, in the spirit of the holidays, exceptions are made for certain family members. It's not our usual practice, but tonight we're trying to accommodate everyone's festive spirit. I felt a swell of anger mingled with disappointment. The notion that there could be selective enforcement, a bending of rules for some, but not for others, was a bitter pill to swallow. In that moment, the promise of an adult-only sanctuary crumbled into a labyrinth of hypocrisy and unspoken biases. The carefully constructed facade of sophistication began to show its cracks. Before I could press further, a nearby host, perhaps sensing the rising tension, stepped in with a conciliatory smile, urging me to enjoy the party and let it go. But as I retreated back into the crowd, my heart pounded with the realization that this wasn't just about a breach of protocol, it was a reflection of a deeper, unsettling inconsistency that threatened the very spirit of the night. In that heated exchange, I recognized a turning point. The carefully drawn boundaries of the evening were no longer clear-cut. The uninvited presence of my sister's children had exposed a vulnerability in the event's design, challenging the notion of what it truly meant to celebrate the holidays in a setting that was meant to be both exclusive and refined. And as I walked away, I resolved that this incident, however disappointing, might just lead to a re-evaluation of the rules, a call for a more genuine, inclusive spirit that embraces the messy reality of family life over sterile perfection. After the confrontation, I retreated to a quieter corner of the loft, away from the clamor of polished conversation and forced smiles. In the soft glow of twinkling fairy lights, I found a moment to collect my thoughts. As I watched the children, my sister's three little whirlwinds, darting between clusters of adults, their laughter and unbridled joy filled the room with an energy that no meticulously curated decor could replicate. In that reflective pause, I began to see the irony of it all. Here we were, in a celebration designed to be an escape from the messiness of family life, yet these little rebels brought with them a reminder of what Christmas is truly about. Their presence, though technically against the invitation's rules, had infused the party with warmth and a kind of chaotic beauty that felt oddly authentic. Memories of past Christmases flooded back, households filled with the sound of children's giggles, spontaneous snowball fights in the yard, and the heartwarming chaos of family gatherings. In those moments, the holiday spirit wasn't about perfect etiquette or adult-only sophistication, it was about togetherness, laughter, and the genuine, messy joy that comes from sharing life with the ones you love. As I sat there, quietly absorbing the scene, the initial sting of injustice began to soften. The strict, exclusionary policy that had seemed so vital at first now appeared rigid and, perhaps, misguided. I realized that in trying to create a flawless, child-free sanctuary, the hosts had inadvertently overlooked the magic that only children can bring, a magic that perfectly encapsulates the unpredictable, joyful spirit of Christmas. In that moment of introspection, I felt a subtle shift inside me. Rather than clinging to the disappointment of rules bent to serve someone's narrow view of perfection, I decided to embrace the unexpected warmth those little voices had injected into the evening. It was a quiet affirmation that, sometimes, the most genuine moments come from the unplanned, the imperfect, and the utterly human. And so, as I returned to the party with a calmer heart, I carried with me a renewed perspective, that the true spirit of Christmas wasn't defined by strict protocols or rigid boundaries, but by the ability to find joy in every moment, especially in those unpredictable bursts of laughter and life brought by family, no matter how uninvited they might be. After that quiet moment of reflection, as the echoes of children's laughter mingled with the soft hum of adult conversation, I made a decision. I could continue to dwell on the hypocrisy of a so-called adult-only party that had secretly invited the unbridled joy of childhood, or I could choose to embrace the irony, and let it transform my night. I decided, right then, to let go of my lingering resentment. Instead of fixating on the strict rules that had been so brazenly broken, I resolved to celebrate the unpredictable magic that these little voices had brought into the room. Their presence wasn't an intrusion. It was a reminder that the holiday season is, at its core, a celebration of life's beautiful imperfections. I began by softening my stance. I rejoined the flow of the evening with a lighter heart, engaging in conversation and laughter with those around me, including the few guests who were quietly amused by the sight of these cheerful interlopers. I found myself drawn to the innocent energy the children exuded. Their giggles and wide-eyed wonder brought a refreshing contrast to the carefully curated sophistication of the party. In a quiet, spontaneous moment, I even bent down to exchange a few playful words with one of my sister's kids, whose infectious smile melted away a bit of the weight I had carried all evening. I realized that, for all our attempts to control the narrative with strict policies and exclusivity, sometimes the true essence of the holidays is found in the unexpected, in the messy, joyful interruptions that remind us of what really matters. With that shift in perspective, I resolved to embrace the irony of the night. I would not allow the rigid expectations to overshadow the warmth and spontaneity that were already redefining the celebration. Instead, I decided that tonight would be a night of genuine connection, a melding of the refined and the real, where laughter was shared freely, no matter its source. In that moment, I understood that the true spirit of Christmas wasn't found in perfectly curated settings or strict adherence to rules. It was discovered in the unplanned and the heartfelt. And with that understanding, I welcomed the delightful chaos into my evening, choosing to let the ironic joy of the uninvited children lift my heart, if only for a few precious hours. As the night wore on, the festive energy shifted into something altogether unexpected, something that felt both authentic and heartwarming. The unanticipated presence of my sister's 3 kids, far from being a disruption, had sparked conversations among guests. A few of the other parents admitted, almost sheepishly, that they, too, had noticed a kind of magic in the children's joyful noise, a reminder of the true, unbridled spirit of the holidays. By the time the party was drawing to a close, the rigid boundaries of exclusivity had melted away. In a quiet moment with the hosts, I found myself expressing what had become painfully clear, that the warmth and spontaneity brought by children were the very essence of Christmas. The hosts, initially defensive about their no-kids rule, began to see the irony in their insistence on a sterile, adult-only celebration. They acknowledged that perhaps the holiday shouldn't be confined by strict protocols or exclusivity. Instead, it could be a blend, a celebration where elegance and joyful chaos coexisted. Inspired by that honest exchange, I resolved to transform my disappointment into a beacon for change. I envisioned a future where our gatherings honored both the sophistication of adult conversation and the infectious enthusiasm of children. A tradition that welcomed every facet of family life, where the laughter of little ones added depth and warmth to our celebrations. In that moment, I realized that the true spirit of Christmas was not about keeping the past at bay with strict rules, it was about embracing the unpredictable, the imperfect, and ultimately, the beautiful togetherness of it all. As I left the loft that night, I carried with me a renewed sense of hope. The uninvited laughter and unbridled joy had not ruined the party, they had enriched it. I made a silent vow that in the future, I would advocate for gatherings that were inclusive of the chaotic, endearing energy that only children can bring. This, I believed, was the pathway to a truer celebration of the holidays, a night where every voice, no matter how small, could be heard and cherished. And so, a new tradition was born from an unexpected twist, one where the true meaning of Christmas, family, love, and togetherness, was celebrated in all its messy, joyful glory.